How do you summarize a career that spanned over 60 years? Decades of brilliance that have included the World Equestrian Games, 2 Olympics, 3 Pan American Games, 4 World Cup finals, and 23 Nation Cup teams. Well, you don't, because Hugh Graham's career is far from over.
If you see him now, Hugh's riding as well as he's ever ridden. And, he's not as old as Ian, but he's just about.
When you watch him out there, you know he's having fun. And even when it doesn't go right, he's still, he's learned something, he's having fun. And that type of rider will always be in style.
I met Hugh many, many times in big championships, representing Canada during the history. And he is a fantastic rider and with a lot of resources in the ring.
Hugh was born in Georgetown in February of 1949. The family pony, Thunder, was the first horse he ever broke and trained. He was a champion calf roper in high school and trained reining and cutting horses. A broken leg ended his rodeo career, but it also led him to his next step, Samson Farm.
Well, Hugh, I first remember Hugh Graham when he worked at Samson Farms under Jimmy Day. And it was always my understanding that he came from the Western world, rodeo type riding, whatever. And you could see that in his riding in the early days, and he would ride kind of like a cowboy. No offense to any cowboys, but they normally don't ride jumpers. So it was an interesting melding of the two worlds.
The best comment I can come up with is Hugh's on several occasions saying to me, "Do as I say, don't do as I do." By his own words, he would say, it's not a classic ride. And he doesn't try to make a classic ride, he tries to get the best ride he can for the horse.
A little bit unorthodox. He's very busy with his hands and his elbows, but he's a very, very talented rider, and his coordination is very good.
While at Samson Farm, Hugh developed a special relationship with Spot Check. Hugh broke the horse and eventually bought it from Canadian Olympian Jim Day. Hugh won his first Grand Prix aboard Spot Check and the Open Jumper Championship at the Royal.
I always used to go to the C&E and the Royal Winter Fair and watch my favorites ride, and Hugh was one of them. And I think he was one of them because he was always, he always had a great character. You could tell he loved his job and he loved competing because he was always, giving it his best. He always went for first place.
One year I rode a stallion of his at the Royal, and I will never forget this about Hugh. We were doing the Gambler's Choice, and I had this course with all of these turns, and I thought that I was like an expert and I knew what I was doing. And he took the piece of paper and he said, "You don't know what you're doing." And he gave me a course, and it was the fastest, easiest course to ride, and I think I ended up in the top 3 in the class.
Hugh's riding talents were attracting attention worldwide. He was named to the Canadian Equestrian Team in 1982, setting the scene for a classic ride 2 years later.
It was actually my last Olympics in LA in 1984, and Hugh had a horse called Elron. He wasn't a top jumper or a top championship jumper. He was a good jumper and could win around here, but when you come to the Olympics and championships, you need a kind of special horse. Well, I'll tell you, Hughie in the second round of the Nations Cup jumped one of the few clean rounds, and he just rode that horse and carried that horse over the fence. That's how just determined he was.
Another major milestone in Hugh's equestrian career occurred at the 1987 Pan American Games. His clean ride in the final round gave the Canadian team the gold medal over the heavily favored American team.
Well, I rode on many teams with Hugh, and he always was an excellent team rider in terms of doing what he should do. We could always depend on him. You'd always get 100% from him. And as strong a character as he definitely is, he was never a controversial figure on any team. He was always a solid, positive supporter.
Hugh's rodeo background also came in handy on at least one occasion.
When we were in Sweden for the World Cup, Huey were in the dress-up class. Huey comes in as a cowboy, which is there. Coming out, he's got a lasso, a rope. He roped one of the girls standing there, but Huey's Huey, and that was some of the humor.
In 1987, Hugh married Cindy Firestone. Their daughter Laurel was on hand for another major development in Hugh's career.
We were looking for a horse, and I went up to his farm at the time, saw this guy riding on a horse with a few-month-old baby that he was holding against his chest, and we started to talk, and I liked him. I liked him enough to be able to go to one of the World Equestrian Games with him, where we managed to buy a show horse, and it all grew from there.
That meeting led to the formation of King Ridge Stables in 1990. Hugh rode King Ridge's Money Talks to back-to-back victories in the Queen Elizabeth II Cup at Spruce Meadows. King Ridge was also recognized as Equine Canada's Breeder of the Year in 2011.
I think that willingness to stay current and to stay loving what you do creates, the passion and the longevity that you can keep your career going for decades.
In 2005, his father-in-law, Morgan Firestone, asked Hugh to take over management of his racing stable.
My husband had a horse called Mike Fox, and he'd been training, he was training down in Florida with another trainer, and Hugh just thought we would go and watch the horse train. And Hugh thought this horse is just not being ridden properly. He was taking off and he was a little bit unmanageable. So Hugh, I think he had a lot of courage because he's from the show jumping world, but he said, look, I want to take Mike Fox and I want to work with him for the rest of the winter time and get him rideable. And so Morgan said, okay, go for it.
And 2 years later, their homebred colt, Mike Fox, won the Queen's Plate. It was an incredible achievement and another salute to Hugh's teaching ability.
Most people don't know this, but Hugh has a certificate in teaching. He actually taught, I believe, high school for a short while. And his passion, of course, was horses. But I think his teaching knowledge helped him a lot in finding ways to get students, bad students like me, to learn and focus on one thing at a time and get to do that well and proceed from there.
Hugh has succeeded in virtually every aspect of equestrian sport, which leads to the question, how do you categorize Hugh Graham?
Unconventional, unique, extremely capable. If he's behind you in a jump off, be very nervous.
Hugh's exploits as a rider are legendary, but his day-to-day behavior has also left lasting memories.
I think enough of them that when Margie went to Spruce Meadows and I wasn't there, Huey looked after her and helped her till I got there. So that's how good he is around with people.
I lost my mother when I was 21, and my inheritance was my 12-year-old sister and my 2 brothers. And I was living on the farm that I would soon later take over. And Hugh Graham showed up on my doorstep the next morning with a picnic basket. I had never been on a picnic. And Hugh took me on a picnic and told me that everything would be all right. And everything was always all right, and I would never trade that in again. But I thank him for being behind me during those times.
Rodeo champ, show jumper, rider, trainer, breeder and coach. Hugh Graham, truly an amazing career and a worthy inductee to the Jump Canada Hall of Fame.